What happens when the pressure of courtroom life meets a deep craving for adventure, rest, and meaning? Meet Jenna, a full time trial attorney who found herself on the edge of burnout, questioning how could she keep pushing forward in a career she worked so hard for? The answer? Travel. Not just any travel, luxury getaways, international escapes, and once in a lifetime experiences, all made possible through points and miles. In this episode, Jenna opens up about how she uses points and miles to create space for joy, recover from stress, and reconnect with what matters without blowing her budget or compromising her career. We unpack her upcoming dream trip to see F1 racing in Italy, how she booked nearly everything on points, her tips for high impact redemptions, and why travel is more than a reward, it's a necessity. Jenna's story will remind you that taking care of yourself can look like boarding a plane, flying business class, and showing up in the world as your best self. And if your travels are anything like Jenna's last Formula One trip, they'll make a permanent and lasting impression on you. And you'll just have to listen to understand what I mean. Welcome to the Revolutionizing Your Journey podcast. I am your host, DeAndre Coke. Today, I have a fantastic guest with you. We've got Jenna, who is an attorney. She's got a great handle. I will let her tell you what her handle is, but she was recommended to us by Devin Gimbel back in episode 61. And so, Jenna, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
I'm so glad you're happy to be here. And so I'm excited for today's conversation for a few different reasons. So Devin was on our show and recommended that you come on board and talk your knowledge of points and miles, and with your handle of at the Travelers in Law, which I just spoiled it, but I think it's a fantastic name. So with your handle, I know that you have a lot to discuss and a lot to share with us today, but why I'm super excited is because of a DM that you sent me that was related to my conversation with Devin on her podcast. And for the listeners there, essentially, while I was on Devin's show, I had mentioned that being a financial advisor, I want to curate the best for my clients for managing their finances and help them accomplish their goals. A lot of that's around retirement planning and funding college for their children and all these different things. But a big part of their goals and lifestyle is to be able to travel more, to get out more, and experience more. And so I referenced how one of my clients said one of his goals was to be able to go out and see an F1 race in Europe, in Monaco specifically, with his kids and wife. So for the whole family going to experience an F1 race, which would be something that would typically be a farther out goal financially. Well, Jenna, you messaged me and said, hey, I actually have a points and miles trip coming up to see an F1 race. And I was like, perfect. We found our conversation for today's episode. So I am super excited, Jenna. So I've already done enough talking, way more talking than I usually do to start out a show, but I wanted to set the tone for the listeners today. So Jenna, tell us a little bit about yourself. How did you go from practicing law by day to points and miles expert at night? And also, where in the world are you currently?
Yeah, so yes, the handle is at Travelers in Law, and I am in Los Angeles, so just outside of it technically, but I work all the way in LA, so I have a very fun commute back and forth, but it's been good.
Very nice, very nice. And so, how did you get into the world of points and miles in general?
Yeah, so I've always loved traveling. It's been something that was super important to me from the time I was young. And I actually got my first points credit card when I was 22. My parents kind of taught me a lot of really good financial practices. So I had a credit card right away. I've always paid it off every single month. And I was just doing the slow burn where you earn just like whatever points. I think I had a Capital One Venture 1. So the 1.2x free version, and was just figured eventually I would have a redemption. I have no idea what I ever did with it. I just used that credit card. And then, but part of the problem with being a lawyer is travel is really difficult to actually accomplish. Like I'm a trial lawyer specifically. So like you start with law school and you can't do anything while you're in law school because you're working during your summer. So there's no vacations there. Then you take the bar exam. I started working the week after the bar exam. And it's really hard to find time before you start practice. And then once you start practicing, especially if you're a trial lawyer, your schedule is moving constantly. I mean, I had a trial that was supposed to start on April 21st that as of yesterday morning is now going on May 12th, which means all my trials for May get pushed to June and July, and things just kind of always spiral. And it's really hard to find time to travel. And so what was going on in my life at the time I started getting really deep diving into points and miles, I was starting to burn out a little bit because trial is very intense. So I had a really severe episode of burnout. At the same time, I had a weird withdrawal from being in trials. So I hadn't been in trial in almost a year, but I'd been prepping for trials that then settled or got moved. So I was kind of getting like the addiction withdrawals of being in trial and had this existential crisis of what am I doing with my life? And decided at that point that the cure for all of this was I need to be traveling more. I need to reprioritize getting out there, seeing the world. I like international travel. I actually really don't care about seeing any parts of the United States. I am fine leaving and going to other places. If I'm going to leave the country, I want to do it in style. And also going with that of having such a small amount of time where I can travel is I want my vacation to start the minute I close my laptop for the last day of work. So my brain is, all right, I'm going to travel internationally with my husband and I'm going to travel in business class and I'm going to go to luxury resorts. And oh, wait, I don't have the money to do that. I mean, I'm a lawyer. I make a decent enough living, but when you have a mortgage, when you have eventually going to start a family, when you support other family members like we do, the lawyer income goes down very fast. So I started deep diving into points and miles. I think I saw a post on Instagram pop up where somebody was like, oh, I got this European business class flight for 57,000 points. And I was like, wait, how can you do that? And I didn't know about transfer partners at the time because I was figuring you just travel, erase, or use the portal. And I was never seeing redemptions like that. So that's kind of how I started going down the rabbit hole of points and miles, and then ended up getting into a trial right after that. And the burnout kind of revitalized with going back into trial.
So perfect. So Jenna, you've had a bit of a wave, as you just said. So you came out of law school. There's the burnout of, well, there's just dealing with law school, then right into work. And from there, you're right. It's not easy being an attorney. Not that I know, but I've got a lot of attorney clients. And while I've got a great amount that are in the estate planning side, so it's a lot of documents. I know for the ones that are on civil litigation and personal injury, it's pretty intense. And to what you said, being an attorney, yeah, great income, but also there's life. And at the same time, you're not in the middle of nowhere, Alabama, which to anyone that's in Alabama that listens to this podcast, not a shot at you guys, but you're in LA of all places, right? So there's expenses. So you're living this life and you're trying to pivot and figure out how can I not be burnt out, which I'm experiencing right now. And wow, there's opportunity to travel. So that's what opened your eyes, it seems. My question is, so how did you go from eyes opening on points to now you've got an Instagram account that's all about points? There's got to be a connection there. So what was it, your first redemption pulled you in? How'd you get from going from, oh, wow, I can do this to let me teach it?
It all really started when I was going down that rabbit hole and was learning about points and miles from other people. And everybody's recommendations were get this card, get that card, and then what? So I started to get really frustrated because I was seeing, here's where you start. This is how you begin. And then here's where I am 10 years into the points and miles universe. And I saw there was a gap in the middle of no one's answering my questions of what comes next. And I kind of started to figure, well, if I have these questions, I'm not that special. If I have these questions, other people probably have them too. And I'm also always have been a very creative person on top of being very analytical. And I had been missing a bit of a creative outlet. And so I just decided that if no one else was going to answer my question, if nobody else out there was going to even start asking these questions, I'm just going to answer it for them and I'm going to figure it out. So that's when I decided to start Travelers in Law. It's a bit of a misnomer because my husband actually has no involvement in the Instagram. It is all me. I'm the only one who does anything. I just like having him on the videos and things like that. And he's a very willing player too and everything like that. So he just cooperates and kind of just lets me do my thing. As long as I'm not too annoying when we're out in public, he's fine with it.
So on that point, with him being a willing player too, is he as much a player too, as far as the fact that he gets involved with the strategy? He knows what cards he's opening next. He's got a whole game plan that he's laid out. Or are you saying, hey, husband, which I'm not sure your husband's name, so you can throw that out there as well. But you're saying, husband, I need you to do X, Y, and Z next. You're going to downgrade this card. You're going to do this. And you're just like, okay, perfect, perfect, perfect. Great. I don't have to think about it. So there's multiple stages of level of player two. Where does your husband fall? And how easy was it, or how reluctant was he to get into this world of points and miles?
So his name is Sam, so I don't have to keep calling him the husband, but I will because it's funny. He is the supportive player too. So he essentially, I will hand him this credit card. I will open this card for him. I will give it to him. And he asks, okay, what do I use it for? And he's pretty good at remembering on his own which cards to use it for. I actually quizzed him one day. It was really entertaining. And he got them all right, including which card do we use for gas? And he was like, well, both of us have gas cards from our jobs. I'm like, exactly. Good job. So he's very good at knowing what cards to use. As for the day-to-day strategy, it's all me. He's just very cooperative and supportive of whatever I want to do. He just kind of goes along with it. And as long as I take him on the vacation, he's fine.
So talking about day-to-day strategy, what does your day-to-day points and miles strategy look like? Because before we start unpacking something as experiential as an F1 race, a trip overseas, luxury, business class, et cetera, I think it's great to create a baseline of what does your day-to-day look like now? And maybe you can comment on how it's evolved from your start in the points and miles space.
Yeah. We kind of have I would say a traditional strategy where we're typically one or both of us is working on a sign up bonus. But if we're not working on a sign up bonus, we're putting everything on our Capital One venture cards. That is a non-category spend to get the 2x on things. And then if there is a bonus category, we're using those cards. So we across the board are not getting less than 2x on any purchase, including our taxes. We do put our taxes on credit cards. And even when there's a sign up bonus, if there's a way to get the sign up bonus using only bonus categories, we try to maximize it that way. So he just opened a Amex Gold. So $6,000 in 6 months. We eat out a fair amount. We do groceries. We can actually hit that with only using the bonus category. So that's what he's working on right now. And that hasn't actually evolved that much. So when I first started, I had the Venture One. And then around the time that we got together, I got the venture card. So I had the 2X with the $95 one. And then right after our honeymoon, I got the Sapphire Preferred. So we had that same kind of a strategy where from the beginning, I was putting everything on a 2X card unless it was dining. And then I would put it on the Sapphire Preferred to get the extra points. So the strategy hasn't evolved so much as it's just expanded and grown to include more cards than it did before.
Awesome. So you've had a path that you've been on. You've kept it honestly fairly simple. I mean, you've got your daily driver. Seems like your daily driver outside of the special categories like dining out and groceries and those type of things. Your daily driver is your Capital One Venture X. You're getting 2X on everything. And you end up bringing that back to that someone's always focusing on some sort of sign up bonus or something along those lines. I always love throwing this out there. And I haven't asked this in the last few episodes. So I'm going to throw this out there to you, Jenna. 2 questions. One, roughly, how many cards at this stage would you guesstimate you and your husband have combined? And I'm curious, I got to ask, what has that done to your credit score? Because there's always going to be someone new listening that's going to hear this and it's going to be like, oh my gosh, I am tanking my credit score by doing this. These people are just ruining their lives, going into debt. So can you clarify for the ones that are listening that are newer to this strategy, into this world of travel and points and miles, the impact to credit scores and the way that debt works with having these points and miles?
So I actually don't even need to guess at how many cards we have. One of the things that was really important to me when I started my Instagram was being transparent and showing what the journey of points and miles looks like in real time. So at the end of every month, I actually post our points totals for every single currency, for all the hotels, for airlines, though I do combine those because there's too many to list. And I also put in there how many points we've earned each month, how many points we've redeemed. And I list out, as of this year, I started listing out which cards we're holding in our wallet at any given time. So I know exactly how many cards we have, and we are at 13 between the two of us.
Wow.
The crazy thing is our credit scores have actually jumped a lot. So we both started with decent credit scores. I think we were around I was at like 750. He was at 720. And that was his biggest concern when I started getting into this is our credit score going to tank? And he's still to this day, even though we're almost a year into this whole journey, is like, why are you opening another card? Like, what's that going to do to our credit score? And I just keep telling him to trust me. I have not been wrong yet. So what ends up happening is our credit score, when we do the initial application, you take about like a 6-point hit. It's not that big of a deal. But then after 1 or 2 payments where you're paying it off in full, you gain 20, 30 points. And now both of us have credit scores well above 800. And in case anyone is thinking, oh, that's a fluke, I got my parents into points and miles, and the exact same thing happened to them. They were in the mid 700s. Now that's really more my mom, not my dad. But now that my mom has opened 3 or 4 new credit cards in a year, her credit score is above 800 consistently. So it's a very counterintuitive thing because you don't recognize that part of the credit score is being made up of credit utilization percentage. So while you may have the very small hit for having a hard inquiry, your credit score actually, the credit utilization is decreasing because you're being given more credit. And if you're not using more money, your percentage is going to decrease. And that accounts for, I think combined, it's around like 30 or 40% of your credit score is credit utilization and percentages. So it's very counterintuitive for most people. And it takes a bit of a leap of faith to just trust that, yes, my credit score will recover those 6 points and it will get a lot better. But I promise everybody it does.
And you're so right. And I love how you explain that component, because I think that's the piece that we're wired to disbelieve. And the reason why is that we're wired to think that debt is bad, which 100% most debt is bad. There is an argument that there's good debt out there, mortgages and other things. But for the most part, unsecured open credit card debt is bad. And so I think when people hear of this strategy around points and miles and opening credit cards, their immediate thought is, oh my gosh, this person's tacking on 10, 20, 30, 40, $50,000 of debt. But like you just said, it's about the utilization. Banks, they don't really love it because you're not making them money, but they love it, or you, I should say, when they say, here's a line of $20,000, and you say, thank you, I'm going to be responsible and not use it. You've given me this money, I'm not going to use it. And by being responsible in this way, that brings your score up, like you just said. And for someone myself, I've been in this world for north of 10 years now. And individually, just myself, between myself and my multiple businesses, I think I'm somewhere around 16 or 17 cards. I love your transparency. The fact that you're showing like the points totals monthly, that's huge. I love the listeners to connect with you on that, because I think that's so helpful for other people to see. So one of the things I try to do to be transparent is I show my credit score, and our comprehensive free points and miles guide on our website. That's a staple. I annually update what my credit score is at the end of the year, each year. I just checked it randomly. Actually, I didn't check. I was in an app and it popped up and it was like 844, right? That's a solid number to have. And most people, if I told them, yeah, I've got 17 credit cards, their first question is, oh, well, what's your credit score going to be? So Jenna, I think it's huge that you're transparent and you're able to help other individuals, specifically like your, not just people that follow you, but your own family, to see the value that this world can bring. So let's elevate the conversation a notch and talk speed. Let's talk high speed, and let's talk F1. And for the listeners out there, I learned something new, because offline, before we started recording, I didn't know there was an F2. I just thought F1 was it. And Jenna can talk F1 for days. And so let's just start with, I actually don't really know where a great place to start would be in the F1 world. So let's just talk about, what's this trip that you're taking? Tell us all about it.
So we are going to the Italian Grand Prix, Monza specifically, to go see Lewis Hamilton's first home race for Ferrari. And I get like giddy and super excited talking about it because I'm so obsessed with it. So we are going to Monza. I'm very excited.
Awesome. So Monza, Italy. So we're going to experience this. Now, my question is, what are the things that are points and miles based and what are the things that are not, or, that we can very easily say, okay, food, obviously not, right? But there's other expenses. I imagine, I've never been to an F1 race, so I could be completely wrong on everything I'm about to say, but I would imagine, if I was guessing, that we've got flights, we've got hotel stays, but maybe not tickets or passes, or maybe you did do a points eraser. I'm not sure. Tell us all the things, Jenna.
So if I attempted to travel erase, I don't think you can travel erase the tickets. But if I did attempt to travel erase the tickets, we'd be talking tens of millions of points. So we are not travel erasing our Formula One tickets. So our strategy actually ended up being, I wouldn't say it's like a hard and fast travel budget, but we have an amount of money that we are willing to spend on a trip. And that money actually covers really, really high end luxury Paddock Club tickets. So we're getting behind the scenes. We're going to get to walk through the paddock, get to meet some drivers again. I have met Lewis Hamilton, and he did sign my arm, and I got it tattooed at the last race we went to. So I know I don't look like a person who would have a race car driver's name tattooed on my arm, but I do. And it is one of my proudest moments.
I'm muting myself to not audibly laugh out loud. There's more so because I did not expect that to be the next statement after he signed my arm. I'm like, that is cool. And I got it tattooed. That's, yeah, awesome. Okay, so.
It's my only tattoo.
Hey everyone, I hope you're enjoying this week's episode. DeAndre here, and I just wanted to interrupt briefly to remind you of two things. First, be sure to sign up for our newsletter where we give you direct access to travel updates, news you'll want to jump on in the points and miles world, and our continuously updated card offers to maximize your travel rewards, often before they're ever mentioned in the show. Also, if you didn't already know, we have a private Facebook group where we share news as it breaks, ideas, and other things that don't make it into the newsletter or show many times. And that's the best place to get your points and miles question answered directly by me and other travel enthusiasts. Both of these links will be in the show notes. Now, back to the show. So you have a budget for high-end luxury experiences, and I think that's very different because there's people that are in the travel world in different realms. You and your husband are very similar to my fiance Taryn and I. We're all dinkwads, all right? So, and we all cater more towards the luxury travel experiences. There's plenty of listeners that we have that are parents with children, and the luxury may come and go, or maybe they stay more in the budget world. So these are obviously very different experiences. And I don't want someone to hear, luxury, I could never do something like that, because obviously we all have different goals when it comes to travel and other things. And I know that at the same time, with like what you had started with, you said, hey, your schedule is very constrained when it comes to travel. So it's very clear that you're really working hard to make the most of the experience that you're going to have. So what are the flights that you're looking forward to when it comes to this F1 trip? And what about staying there? Were you able to snag a hotel on points, or because it's such a big event, was that not really available to do?
Actually, that was part of our goal, was we were going to put as much of our travel budget as possible towards the tickets so we could get these better tickets, and then travel hack the rest of it. So all of our flights getting there are on points. We actually have a wedding the next weekend in New York. So we're going straight from the race to a wedding. That's all entirely on points. Our hotel is on points. Everything else other than the tickets and then food. And then obviously if we do anything else in Italy, which we will because we're going to be there for about a week, will be out of pocket. But the biggest expenses of flying, staying in the hotel, we got on points. So we've been to an F1 race before. We went to Silverstone in 2023, and that was the one in England. And we did a package there, and we were staying at the Hilton Northampton. So when we decided to do the Monza race, the first step we looked at was, what is the hotels that Formula One Experiences is going to put up their package holders? Because we could have added the hotel to our package, but I did the math and I looked it up and I looked, okay, this is the hotel that they're staying at. And lo and behold, it is a Hyatt. Thankfully, you could stay at a Hyatt or a Hilton, and obviously Hyatt's going to have a better value because of the chase points. So looking at what was the redemption, like what was the points cost in that time period for the Hyatt versus the cash price if I book direct, versus the price of what the hotel was for Formula One's package. And it was an astronomical difference. So the great thing is we were actually able to book that same exact Hyatt using points. And we're going to get to be around all the F1 fans. I know when we were in England last time, there was actually a pit crew for McLaren who was staying at the same hotel. So you're around some of the people involved. You get the same F1 experience. I didn't have to pay like $3,000 more on top of an already expensive ticket when I could book it for 25,000 points a night. So if anyone is trying to do something like this, that's actually a recommendation I would make, is look at where the event is putting their people up, because they typically will use bigger hotel chains, which means you can probably book it on points for cheaper.
Yeah, that's great advice. And I would argue the vast majority of people that are going to be willing to go and pay these elevated ticket prices are not looking at a point strategy. They're saying, hey, it's an F1 race. Oh, it's here. I want to be with them. Swipe the credit card, done. But for us in this world, we can look at it from a different vantage point, and maybe we decide to pay cash if all the award stay nights are up. But in your case, I mean, how lucky is that A, it's a Hyatt, B, they had award night availability, and because of a fixed award calendar as opposed to dynamic pricing, especially with Hyatt, that we've got the ability to lock in. We said 25,000 points a night. I'd imagine that was, I have no idea, but I would assume it was $700, $800, $900 per night instead. So you're getting a huge amount of value for your points because of this event. So do you actually know what your redemption was? I know it was around 25,000 points per night or something like that. Do you actually know what the actual cost per night was in cash and what your redemption value was?
Yeah. So if I had been booking through Formula One experiences, they only would have gone Thursday night through Monday, and that was $3,000. So $770 a night. And then the actual cash prices were along the lines of $900 a night. But what ended up happening is, so we're going Thursday to Thursday. And so we got the entire week for 161,000 Hyatt points. And that worked out to about 3 cents per point for a week.
Fantastic.
Not bad.
Not bad at all. Absolutely love that. So what can one expect outside of maybe getting their arm tattooed? What can one expect in an amazing F1 experience overall? Like, what is it like for someone like myself who's never been?
Well, I do want to say, like, we are doing the second highest hospitality package. So Formula One races are not all going to be as insanely expensive as how we're doing it. I have a friend who's going, and they are just doing grandstand tickets. They are much more affordable to do grandstand. There's tons of different packages. You can go for certain days. So I don't want people to think that just because we decided we wanted to be insane, and this is also our one vacation for the year, I don't want people thinking that because we decided to be insane, it takes being insane to go to an F1 race. So you could actually do what we're doing of travel hacking your flights, travel hacking your hotel, and still go to a Formula One race without it being breaking the bank. In fact, that makes it super affordable to go to an F1 race. So I don't want to give the wrong impression to people.
So again, I think that goes back to what I'd said earlier, that it makes sense. You said that yourself, this is your one vacation for the year. You are going all in to make sure that the experience is worthwhile. And that's a big reason for the name of this podcast and this show. That's why it's called the Revolutionizing Your Journey, because it's revolutionizing your travels. It's doing travels differently. You were able to get much more out of whatever your budget is, which you don't have to say the exact amount, but whatever your budget is, you're able to derive so much more value out of that same budget because you were able to get a reduction in cost for your hotel, which arguably is free because it's all in points, reduction in cost of your airfare, because I would argue that the taxes and fees for, I'm assuming more than likely business class, are going to be less than what you would have paid for economy for your flights there as well. And so you get there in style. As you said, you can close your laptop at work and then think about this trip and not be like, oh my God, I've got to travel from LA to Italy in a middle row in the back of the plane. No, you're going to be popping champagne from the time you get to the airport and the lounge all the way to when you land in Italy. And then you're going to have an F1 experience where I'm sure there's going to be a story of a second tattoo. So I'm not getting over this. So who are you flying? What's the business class experience that we're looking forward to for these flights?
I am not allowed to get another tattoo from Hamilton, by the way. My husband has said, no, one man branding my arm is enough. It was my husband's idea too, by the way, to get the tattoo. So he doesn't really have any way to complain about it. We are doing Air France business class from LA to Madrid, and then doing a little puddle jumper-esque from Madrid to Milan. And that one was about, I think it was 80,000 points each, which was pretty incredible, and about 200 in taxes and fees. And then because we're going to a wedding in New York, we're actually doing Milan to JFK on Emirates business class. So very excited for that one, to go back to the Emirates account or the Emirates flight. And then our way home from New York, that is one I'm still trying to figure out, but it's either going to be like United or American Airlines, also in business class, because I'm not going to do this whole trip of luxury and then end on, like you said, economy in the middle. Just not going to do that. That'd be quite the come down.
So strategically, there's a few things to unpack with that itinerary you just mentioned. So the first one is, I'm going to ask, because someone's going to be thinking this, why in the world wouldn't you just fly straight from LAX to Milan? Why are you going to Madrid? Can you explain the thought process there? I'm assuming you're flying out of LAX, but if you're not, from wherever you are flying, why are you flying into Madrid versus just right into Milan?
So all the redemptions that I was looking at when we were booking these tickets from LA to Milan were insane values. Like, they were really, really high. It was 120,000 points each plus. And I knew that was a tolerable redemption, but I felt like I could do better. And I wasn't finding flights that I liked. So that's when I decided to look elsewhere and found the LA to Madrid for a really great deal. And then I figured, I have the Venture X, so I have a $300 travel credit, which that will wipe out the cost of a European positioning flight from Madrid to Milan. And then we get to stay in Madrid overnight and pretend that we can check another country off our list, which realistically doing a 12-hour layover in Spain doesn't count, but we'll count it.
It counts. You left the airport and slept in a bed overnight. So
yeah, exactly.
It counts. That's absolutely perfect. And that's what the piece I wanted of those that are listening to really, especially the new individuals in Points and Miles, to really grasp, because oftentimes I talk about the fact that where I live in Virginia, I've got to take a positioning flight everywhere I go when we go overseas to Singapore or Bali or Maldives. But what we don't talk about a lot is the positioning flight on the back end. So for you being at a major hub, you could fly direct to most anywhere in the world, which is great. But knowing that, okay, I'm going to have a positioning flight on the back end instead of the front end can help save a lot of points and make your redemption, in this case, 40,000 points less per person, which is a nice chunk of points to save, which is fantastic. So that was the first thing I wanted to unpack. The second piece was that, so you've got what's called the Fifth Freedom Flight, which is Emirates from Milan to JFK, super popular flight, very popular in the Points and Miles space. It's called the Fifth Freedom Flight because that's a flight that's operated by an airline that's not a hub. It's not their hub. So for Emirates, their hub is Dubai. And I'm curious, are you strategically hoping for that first class upgrade, or did you book through Emirates points directly, or did you go another route and won't be eligible for the upgrade to first class possibility at check-in?
I don't know the answer to that. I transferred points to Emirates and booked through Emirates directly. I don't know if that makes us ineligible for first class, or I don't know how that actually works, but I don't think we have an expectation to try to upgrade to first class, partly because it's only like an 8 or 9 hour flight. And if I'm going to be in first class, if I want to get that full experience, I honestly want to do it on like a 17-hour flight. So I'd rather save it and kind of like eventually pay more points for that first class experience where I get to like maximize the amount of time I'm doing it, more so than I can handle Emirates business class for 9 hours.
So I 100% understand what you're saying. However, and let me be the first person to tell you, the listeners, you're hearing this live, even though you're hearing it after it's been recorded, but hearing this live. So yeah, so if you transferred your points directly to Emirates and you booked through Emirates, you are 100% eligible to do the first class upgrade. And Jenna, I've got to tell you, if we go to check in and there are 2 seats available for first class, 100% you have to take it. It is going to be absolutely worthwhile. And if for someone that loves the luxury and the high end, the unlimited Dom and caviar for 9 hours is absolutely worth it. I did it on a 5 hour leg from Male to Dubai. It was not available for the 15-hour flight from Dubai to JFK, but that was a very magical 5 hours. I'm not going to lie. And I do not want you to miss out on the opportunity. So make sure to check and see if you can. And if you can, at the desk, transfer your points right there at the airport if you have the opportunity to. And that goes for any listeners. If the seats are available for Emirates first class, take it. I would wager, okay, if it's an hour flight, maybe not. But anything north of 4 hours, absolutely snag it. It will be an experience. It will be worthwhile.
I mean, the cash value of those points would be the value of one bottle of Dom, and I think I can make it through more than one bottle of Dom in 8 hours. So challenge accepted. All right, I'll make sure we do that.
100%. So, Jenna, fantastic conversation today. There's been some really great takeaways. So, the last thing I wanted to take away from when you talked through your flight itinerary was the fact that you haven't yet figured out the JFK to LAX leg. And I think that's important for our listeners to hear, because when planning trips, especially on points and miles, it's very different from the traditional way of saying, okay, so I want a round trip flight. These are my dates going and coming back. Done, checked off. Sometimes you got to piece this in, and you might not fill in all the legs until just a few weeks or a month or so before your flight. So I like that you mentioned that you're still trying to figure that piece out, because it helps give people the realization that you don't have to have the whole itinerary planned out and all the point redemptions all at the same time. You can do this piece by piece.
It's actually stressing me out though, because I am very much a planner. And I think that's something that, as much as it stresses me out, I actually kind of like it too, that because this is not the only time I'm going to be doing one of these crazy put flights together puzzle pieces. We did Bali and Malaysia in December, January of this year. And it was the same thing. I think we took 7 different airlines. It was that meme from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia where you have Charlie with the red strings everywhere pointing. That was what that Bali and Malaysia trip was like. And it was a madhouse trying to plan it. But I'm getting to make sure I get the best value by putting the pieces together. And that is just a luxury that I don't feel like I would have gotten without using points and miles, because I would be paying cash prices and you doing usually round trip because it's cheaper. This way I can kind of make sure the trip works together. And then also it's hard to book these trips fast. Like I had to book, what was it? Like 11 months ahead of time. All the pieces may not be there at the same time. So, but getting to put it here and there, getting the time, especially with work, I only have like 15 minutes here and there to check for flights. So I don't have like the hours I would have needed to put this whole itinerary together in one fell swoop. So I like the piecemeal aspect of it. At the same time, I am stressed out and looking at redemptions for those flights back. And I'm like, these are not what I want them to be yet.
Well, I love the transparency there and recognizing that it is okay to be a little bit stressed. This is a little bit of a different world. We're not necessarily stressed about the financial side as much as the can we actually get home piece of the strategizing the trip, which I 100% understand.
If I have to pay cash, I'll pay cash. I would just prefer not to.
I mean, that's why we live in this world, because we're trying to get more for less and still enjoy the luxuries, which is 100% okay. And in this case, financial advisor approved. So I want to wrap up here with a question that I think is going to be very helpful, because you're living this right now, or in this world, especially with the career that you and your husband are in. The world of points and miles is a lot. Like you said, you only get 15 minutes here and there. All of us want to be able to travel all the time, but not all of us have the opportunity, the PTO, the schedule, the livelihood, the family life, whatever it may be, to allow them to do that. What's your best advice for the busy professionals who are out there that are just trying to figure out how they can get away, whether it's points or miles or in general? What's your advice for how they can enjoy the travel life regardless of their schedules and their circumstances?
I think when it comes to doing the travel in general, my biggest piece of advice is do it. You have PTO, even if it's a small amount, use it. Never leave that on the table because your job, honestly, none of them care. We are all replaceable at our jobs. As much as I like to think I am indispensable, I am only to a certain degree. And it is actually better for my job and better for my clients if I go on a vacation, because I had it this last year. I had a year almost without any travel. And I was so burnt out at the end of the year that I was not being an effective lawyer. And I actually had to take a step back from some of my cases. I had to give up a trial, which was gut wrenching. But as soon as I went on my trip to Bali, I came back and I'm a better lawyer for having gone and taken that time to myself. I know doctors have the same thing. Travel is so important. If travel is important to you and that is the way that you avoid burning out, that needs to be a priority. And it's really hard for young lawyers. Our careers are very competitive. You will be a better lawyer and you'll be a better person. You'll be a better partner. Trust me, that time period where I was not traveling and I was burnt out, my husband was not having a good time. The dog was not having a good time. She was depressed. So it's so important to take that time for yourself. And I know it's really hard to do. So that would be my advice for a young professional wanting to make sure they do the travel is it is self-care. It is important and you need to do it and just accept the boundaries. They're not going to fire you for taking your PTO. I don't think they legally can, even though caveat, I am not giving legal advice in any way on this. I am not a lawyer for you guys. It's just entertainment value and my personal opinions as a non-lawyer. When it comes to learning, especially because it can take a lot of time to learn how to do this hobby, my advice in that area would be to start simple and just start one step at a time. I am very much one of those kinds of people who I feel like I need to know everything before I get started on something. And by doing that, I look back now at the years I spent that I could have been getting a card that had a higher earn rate. How many points have I left on the table? How many points is my husband? Don't even get me started on how many points my brother is leaving potentially on the table by not having a points earning credit card. There's a black sheep in every family. He's ours. Get a card now that starts letting you earn points while you learn the rest of it. And each step of the way, I kind of do this thing that I call it intentional ignorance. The world is very overwhelming. There's a lot of information. So I intentionally narrowed my focus when I started to, I'm going to learn how to do Capital One. And I'm going to do the best job at Capital One I can. I'm going to learn all the things. And then, okay, I have a handle on Capital One. Now I can pay attention to Chase. And I did the exact same thing with Chase. It was a year before I opened an Amex because I needed to narrow my focus so that I didn't get overwhelmed. The information will still be there when you're ready. But if you only have a few minutes here, a few minutes there to learn things and you're learning in bits and pieces, the most important thing is just to be making those steps and ignore the rest, ignore the FOMO. Just take one step at a time but just start. Because if you don't start now, you're never going to start. And then you're leaving hundreds of thousands of points on the table. And you too could go meet Lewis Hamilton and have him sign your arm. If I was in my office, there would be a photo of him back here. I'm not even kidding. I have a shrine to him in my work office. There is Funkos, there is photographs.
It's a whole thing.
I'm a mess.
No, I think the obsession works well with an obsession for travel and points and miles. It all just blends all together, which is great. Jenna, this has been an absolute joy of a conversation. That was a fantastic notes to end on. I mean, the two takeaways there. One, take the trip, go experience it. It will make you a better professional. I firmly believe that 100%. I have basically built my practice with that as the goal and the mindset. Before I was producing content and all the things, friends were asking, how are you traveling so much? It's because I cram a lot into the time I'm in the office so that I can get away and decompress and enjoy and travel, and I keep that cycle going. Travel allows me to do so much more for my clients, and I believe that 100% of what you said. And for the individuals that are trying to learn everything with points and miles before they start, you hit it the nail on the head. Just start. You're not going to become an expert overnight, but you could be missing out on so much just because you're trying to know everything 100%. Jenna, fantastic conversation. Fantastic information today. Lots of laughs. A tattoo story I will never forget as well. But before we wrap this one up, where can the listeners follow you? I know you said your handle before. Can you say it again and on all the channels that you're on?
Yeah, and if you want me to, I can actually show the tattoo. It's not like in an inappropriate spot. We are on a camera.
Absolutely. Yeah, let's see it. If you're listening to the audio, you have to watch the YouTube video to see it.
Okay, let's see if I can show it. So it's upside down, but I can't do it awkwardly like that. I guess I can, kind of.
Okay.
Yep.
Nice.
So he signed my arm, and 44 is actually like my magic number, and not because of him, just independently. He had signed it twice and it didn't work, and he signed it the third time and he added the 44, and that's the one I got tattooed.
I love that.
Yeah, so it's great. So I'm actually only at Instagram right now because same kind of intentional ignorance. I don't have the bandwidth to start a blog yet. I don't have the bandwidth to learn TikTok. I'm also a middle millennial. I don't get TikTok. So we're on Instagram at Travelers in Law. So TravellersinLaw. And that is where you can find everything, all the transparency and all the reluctant husband camera shots.
Well, awesome. We'll go ahead and make sure to link to that in the show notes. Last two questions before we wrap this one up. Jenna, the first, who else should we have on the show? Devin said that you would be a fantastic guest. She was 100% correct on that. This has been a great conversation. I know the listeners are like, all right, well, like, who can Jenna bring on next? Who's going to keep the excitement going? So I'd love to know who else should we have on the show.
Oh, goodness. See, my recommendation would have been Devin. I just love her so much. She's great. So I've got a points person and a non-points person, and I haven't listened to your entire back catalog, so I don't know if you've already brought her on. So for the points person, I love Kelly, Points and Miles doc. I think she is so sweet and so knowledgeable. And her messages to doctors with burnout have actually really helped influence how I deal with things as a lawyer. She's great. I would recommend her if you haven't already had her on. For a travel, but not a points person, there's actually a family that I follow called the Hendricks Tribe on Instagram. And they are a family of 5 who are full-time travel with young kids. And the way that they have made all these their financial background, the way they've just created this lifestyle that's very alternative from what we're used to in the US, but with like multiple creative streams of income, the way they show the world. And they're also just the sweetest people. And I think they're a really interesting alternative view from what we normally see in the world. So I would recommend either of those two.
Well, that is perfect. So we have had Kelly on the show. She had a fantastic episode.
I love Kelly.
Yeah, I'm very likely going to have her on the show again for a future episode. We'll link to her previous episode in the show notes because she did talk about the burnout and the anxiety and how she is able to travel so much and do a lot of luxury as well for herself and her partner. And I know that she's in that same side of the world as you, as she's on the West Coast there also. But that being said, the Hendricks family sound very interesting, so we'll look to connect with them because I always love, although most of our content and most of our podcast episodes are more so points and miles focused, I do love bringing in those speakers or the guests that have unique travel stories and dynamic travel content and conversations. So appreciate those connections and those introductions. Very last question for you, Jenna. Any final thoughts? We said a lot. We covered a lot today. Any final thoughts that you have for the listeners? Anything else that you thought of that you want to get out there before we wrap this one up?
Enjoy your life. You only get one.
We will keep it as succinct as that. Jenna, thank you so much for being on the show today. This was 100% value, fun, energy. You are someone that has revolutionized your own journeys, your own travels, your own lifestyle, and you revolutionized your arm. And so across the board, fantastic show today. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks for having me. This was a blast.
And for the listeners out there, if you want to continue to revolutionize your own travels, please continue to follow us, subscribe to the podcast. We would love a rating and a review. Be sure to follow Jenna and all of our content at Travelers in Law. She is someone, as you can see, she is transparent. She's showing everything, the good and bad in points and miles and everything in between, and you will not be disappointed. As always, we can't wait to catch you on the next episode. Take care, everybody.